The air smelled of freshly cut grass and the distant ring of ice cream trucks. But in the middle of this picture-perfect neighborhood, something was fundamentally wrong. A red tricycle lay overturned on the sidewalk of Elm Street. Its wheels were still spinning slowly, rhythmically as if it were waiting for its rider to return. But 3-year-old Charlotte Patterson wasn't coming back. When the 911 call came in at 4:12 p.m., the operator didn't hear a voice at first. Just the sound of a mother, Sarah Patterson, gasping for air, her words caught in a throat tight with terror. "She's gone," she finally choked out. "I only looked away for a second. The door was open, and she's just gone." Within the hour, the monster wasn't just a bedtime story. It was a reality, and the most terrifying part. The monster didn't have claws or fur. He had a smile. A smile that little Charlotte had seen every day. A smile she trusted. To understand the shock that rippled through Clear Creek, you have to understand the place. This was the kind of town where people didn't lock their doors, where neighbors weren't just acquaintances, they were family. Charlotte Patterson was the heart of Elm Street. Known as Lottie to her parents, she was 3 years of pure, unadulterated sunshine. She loved yellow boots, chasing the neighbor's golden retriever, and she had a habit of waving at everyone, literally everyone who passed her house. Her mother, Sarah, was a local teacher. Her father, Mark, worked in construction. They were the average family, but their love for Charlotte was extraordinary. On the day she disappeared, June 14th, the heat was stifling. Sarah had been folding laundry in the living room while Charlotte played with her blocks on the screened-in porch. The screen door was latched, or so Sarah thought. But when a neighbor's car backfired down the street, drawing Sarah's attention for a fleeting moment, the silence that followed was heavy. When she turned back, the blocks were there. A half-eaten apple was there, but the porch door was swinging wide. Charlotte was a child who didn't run away. She was shy around strangers. So if she left that porch, it meant one of two things. She had been taken by force, or she had followed someone she knew. By 6 p.m., Clear Creek looked like a war zone. Hundreds of volunteers lined up, arm in arm, sweeping through the dense woods that bordered the Patterson property. The police department, led by Detective Silas Thorne, a man who had seen everything, but feared this specific scenario most initially focused on the wandering theory. Maybe she followed a butterfly, maybe she went to the creek. The realization hit the community like a physical blow. This wasn't a search for a lost child. This was a hunt for a predator. Detective Thorne began the grim task of interviewing the inner circle. Statistics tell a brutal story. In cases like this, the perpetrator is rarely a stranger. Thorne looked at the grieving father, Mark. He looked at the frantic neighbors. He looked at the nice guys. He knew that somewhere in this crowd of weeping volunteers, a monster was hiding in plain sight. The first major break, or what they thought was a break, came from a doorbell camera 3 houses down. At 4:08 p.m., 4 minutes before the 911 call, a white utility van was seen speeding away from the cul-de-sac. The internet went wild. The white van became the boogeyman of social media. Police spent 48 grueling hours tracking down every white van in the tri-state area. They found a plumber, a florist, and a carpet cleaner, all with solid alibis. The van was a red herring, a distraction while the trail grew cold. Detective Thorne turned his attention back to the footprints. They were size 11, a common size, but the tread was unique, a work-tough brand sold at a local hardware store. Then came the psychological shift. Thorne noticed something strange about one of the neighbors, Gary Miller. Gary was a bachelor, a quiet man who lived 2 doors down and spent his days meticulous tending to his rose bushes. Gary had been the most helpful volunteer. He brought coffee to the police. He organized the prayer vigil. But during a routine interview, Thorne asked Gary where he was at 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Gary smiled that same nice guy smile Charlotte always waved at and said he was in his backyard, pruning his roses. It was too perfect. Most people were panicked, stumbling over their words. Gary was calm, too calm, and then I looked at his hands. Gary's hands were covered in small scratches. He claimed they were from the roses, but Thorne noticed a deeper scratch on Gary's forearm, one that looked remarkably like it could have been made by the tiny fingernails of a child fighting for her life. Thorne obtained a search warrant for Gary Miller's home, but not for the house itself, for the detached garage. When the forensic team entered, it smelled of cedar and oil. It looked like a standard workshop. But under a heavy workbench, they found a loose floorboard. Beneath that floorboard wasn't a body. It was a shrine, Polaroids, dozens of them. Photos taken from a distance, through windows, over fences, photos of the children of Elm Street. And at the center of the collection, a single handwritten note that read, "Charlotte." The brightest sun, but then they found the first piece of evidence, and it changed everything. About 200 yards into the woods, snatched on a briar patch, was a small, yellow ribbon. It was the one Sarah had tied in Charlotte's hair that morning, but it wasn't just dropped, it was torn. Along with it, investigators found a set of adult footprints in the soft mud deep, hurried imprints that indicated someone was carrying extra weight. The community's nice guy was a serial voyeur who had finally crossed the line into something much, much darker. But Gary wasn't there. He had vanished an hour before the warrant was served. The hunt was on. Everyone expected Gary to be miles away. But the monster didn't want to leave his collection. A canine unit picked up Gary's scent not at a bus station or an airport, but back at the Patterson house. In an unthinkable twist of psychological depravity, Gary had returned to the scene of the crime. He was hiding in the crawl space beneath the Pattersons' own porch, the very porch Charlotte had been taken from. When police pulled him out, he wasn't smiling anymore. He was sobbing, clutching a small, stuffed rabbit that belonged to Charlotte. But the question remained, where was Lottie? In a final, chilling interrogation, Gary broke. He hadn't intended to kill her, he claimed. He just wanted to keep her. He had hidden her in an abandoned hunting cabin 5 miles into the woods, intending to go back for her when the heat died down. Police raced to the cabin. They burst through the door, fearing the worst. And there, huddled in the corner of a dusty room, wrapped in a dirty moving blanket, was Charlotte. She was dehydrated, terrified, and silent. But when she saw the light from Detective Thorne's flashlight, she didn't scream. She reached out her small hand and whispered a single word, "Home." Gary Miller was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The monster of Clear Creek would never see the sun again, but the scars on Elm Street remained. The Pattersons moved away 6 months later. The memories of the porch were too heavy to bear. The neighborhood that once never locked its doors now has security cameras on every corner. The case of Charlotte Patterson serves as a harrowing reminder. We teach our children not to talk to strangers. But how do we teach them to beware of the person who smiles at them every morning? How do we explain that sometimes the monster isn't under the bed? Sometimes the monster is the one holding the door open for you. Charlotte is older now. She's safe. But she no longer waves at every car that passes by. Because she knows what lies behind a smile. Stay vigilant. Stay safe. And most importantly, keep your loved ones close. Thank you for joining us at the Real Crime Chronicles. Until next time.